Welcome to Inspire, the Angel Flores podcast, where you'll be inspired, equipped, and entertained.
Okay, Jeannine, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to hear your story and have you on. So let's start out with backstory, your story. Where were you born, raised, that kind of stuff?
Sure. And thank you for having me, Angel. Really appreciate it. So I grew up in upstate New York in a little town called Skaneateles. Okay. And interesting enough, I looked at, in the 60s, what was the population? And the population is about the same. So population of 7,000. Oh, wow. So small community,
so a few,
so to speak,
have been born. And about the same number have gone on to be with the Lord.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Why do people live there? Is there industry? Is there?
Well, actually, Skaneateles is it's a little town at the base of one of the Finger Lakes, Skaneateles Lake.
Okay. And
Skaneateles Lake is actually, at one time, was considered the cleanest lake in the world. I don't think it has that title now, but it is the cleanest lake in all of New York State. Okay.
So and do people go up there for the summer? Is it that kind of place? Okay, gotcha.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I will tell you, I grew up in a blue collar family. My parents both had only 8th grade educations. Okay. And so my dad was the town butcher. And my mom actually, of course, when we were really little, did stay home. But then she did work once we were all in school. And she worked as a waitress at a very popular little town eatery. She worked in retail. And so we were the blue collar family in a very upper middle class community.
Gotcha, yeah.
And really, I look back now, and what I appreciate about that were the values that my parents had and why my dad and mom became respected in this community.
Interesting.
I always laughed and said, maybe we weren't on the other side of the tracks, but we sure saw them.
Right, yeah. You could see
they
it
were
from
across the street.
You could see it from my house, yeah.
Yep. And so, hard work was very, very important to my parents. Their faith, our faith was very, very important. Can't ever imagine missing a Sunday service, as a child. We went to St. Mary's of the Lake. Okay. We grew up Catholic.
Catholic church, right?
Yeah. Grew up Catholic. And it just was, very, very important.
Your dad had to have known everybody. I mean, the town butcher.
He did.
He's that guy. Did he have his own shop or did he work for somebody?
He worked for somebody. Okay. It was a red and white grocery store. They had, now I look back and think, gosh, that was a huge, butcher shop, because they had a whole section that was devoted. And Dad was known as the person to go to for all of your meat.
He knew it, yeah.
He was.
I was just thinking about that the other day. It's rare now to go to a grocery store and to be able to walk up and say, give me 3 pounds of this. Exactly. Like that doesn't really, more and more stores are, let's bring that back. Anyway.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
I was just thinking about that the other day.
Yeah. Or, I've got this special occasion. What would you recommend, Bill? Right. Certainly all the hunters.
Can I order something?
Yeah. The hunters in the area brought, the carcass to him.
Oh, so he would do that too. Huh?
Yep. It was actually, it was a butcher shop and then a locker. So you also could, have your meat stored there.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So it was, rather interesting. Right. And of course, it probably was smaller than I remember as a child.
For sure, yeah.
But, to me, it was this big, huge room.
I bet if you could walk around that grocery store right now.
Oh, gosh.
It's probably like maybe Jerry's Market here downtown, kind of a smaller neighborhood grocery store or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. And my dad also was very community-minded. So he was in the Lions Club. He became president of the Lions Club. He volunteered to be a volunteer paramedic in the fire department. Was an all volunteer fire department. That sense of being a part of the community. What I look back And growing up in that community, I went to a school where it wasn't, are you going to college? It was, where are you going to college? And so for 4 kiddos, I have 3 brothers and, brothers and sisters. There's 4 of us. I'm the oldest.
Okay.
We could never have imagined, I think, going to college. And I wonder if we had not lived in that community, if we had, but.
So there was just a community expectation.
It was.
Everyone here goes to college.
And we're going to do whatever we can. So there were scholarships. There were things. Skaneatlas High School.
Okay. And then where'd you end up going to college?
Well, I ended up first going to a liberal arts Catholic all girls.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Only about 25 miles away.
Okay.
And then moved on to go to the State University of New York at Geneseo, one of the state systems. Okay. Right.
So the Catholic school you went to, was that more like a community college, or was it like
it was
junior
college?
Year.
It was
okay,
a 2
year.
It
was like a junior college. Yeah.
Right. I only attended for a year, and then decided I kind of wasn't getting what I wanted, and so thought, no, it's time to now move on to, the next step in my what I wanted to do. Right.
All nuns.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
I was an altar boy growing up, so I remember, some of that. Yeah.
Yep.
And so then you went to the state college. What was it called?
State University of New York at Geneseo, which is south of Rochester. Right.
Oh, okay. So you're
again,
upstate.
Small community. Yes. Small community.
Home of the Fighting was a mascot.
Oh gosh, I don't even know. And
someone can put that in the show
I led
notes.
Demonstrations during that time.
Really? Okay.
I did.
Talk about that.
It was certainly a time.
Was it Vietnam?
Yes.
Is that what you were demonstrating in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. And so got very engaged. Did indeed go to demonstrations, be able to hear people speak about all of that. Had actually a high school close friend who went to Kent State. She didn't, pass away, obviously, but we heard kind of firsthand, about
she was
some
there,
things.
Huh?
Yeah. And so those things, and really when I look back and I think, where did some of that commitment to social justice happen?
I was just going to ask you that. Why do you think that sparked something in you? Were your parents against the war? Was your brothers drafted? Anything like that?
No, but a couple things, because I've thought about this. One, it was like, it's that time of rebellion and finding yourself.
Right.
So I realized that it just was there. So it was a way to express. But when I look back, I remember the lessons, mom and dad, the things that they said to us. And, they said, God, put everybody on this earth. No one is above another. And so, it's not until later that you look back and go, so where did that come from? Why did I feel so strong about having to stand up for people and for what's right in my mind and all of that? And it really was all those early lessons about, I can remember my grandpa who only spoke Polish, So we'd had an interpreter as a child, but him saying things like that.
Oh, so he was Catholic also?
Yes.
So, the Catholic Church has a very strong ethic of life.
Yes.
And so I could see how maybe your parents didn't necessarily tell you war is bad.
Right.
But the ingredients that they placed into you while you're growing up, you came to that conclusion by yourself.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
So there was protests and demonstrations.
There were.
What were you studying?
And actually, I started getting a degree in speech pathology and audiology, and decided it wasn't for me. And then switched to, I had a dual degree in elementary education and special education.
Okay.
And so actually volunteered. There was at that time, those that were mentally challenged were indeed put in institutions. And so I actually did volunteer at a place where folks were severely mentally challenged. Right.
So now, that's a different generation, because now the government, I think society has recognized the best care is in the home from the family.
Right.
But back then that wasn't the case. Then it was.
No, you put away. The best thing is, the family won't be able to best handle a Down syndrome child, especially one that is, severely mentally challenged. Mm. And so, but
gosh, I can imagine the conditions.
So I was drawn to that special education. I did my student teaching. I had, 14 Down syndrome kids. Loved it. Loved every minute of that.
There's not a softer heart in a kid than a Down syndrome. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. So, so that was always kind of in me. When I look back, I think it really were the lessons that my parents and my family taught me.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So then get your degree, planning to teach. What happened?
So I met my husband.
Oh, how'd you guys meet?
Actually, we went to the same. Bob was in the Navy at the time.
So you were protesting him.
Yeah, no, I was not protesting those that were in the armed services. I think that's really, really important.
An important distinction
that is, in fact, if anything, I supported our armed services folks. And so I think that's
what
essential.
They were told to do. And
exactly. It had nothing to do with whether or not I supported actually, the young men that I knew that I went to school with that went off to Vietnam.
Right.
It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with my sense of feeling that the fact that we were there.
The big picture, right. Yeah.
And that so many men were dying. And so it had nothing to do with not supporting those people in the service.
Bob, we support you.
Yeah, exactly.
So how'd you guys meet?
So actually, we went to the same high school.
Oh, okay.
We actually dated each other's friends.
Oh, interesting.
And he was home on leave.
So he dated one of your friends?
Yes, he did.
What was her name?
Her name was Kathy Wiggers.
Kathy. Oh. Anyway.
Yep. And so, anyways, we were at a party, kind of a gathering at a beachfront.
After college?
I was in college. Okay. Bob was in the service.
Okay.
Right. And so we began writing to each other just as friends. And I fell in love with this person. Bob has an amazing knack of expressing himself through the written word. And
was he on a ship or was he?
He was on the John F. Kennedy.
Wow.
And at one point thought that they would be going off the shores of Vietnam and ended up that they were called there was a crisis in the Suez area. They sent the ship there. So he spent time over in the Mediterranean.
Okay.
Right. So anyways,
how long did you write?
Probably a couple years.
Wow.
Before then, when he would come back, then he'd say, well, let's go out, I was working that summer that he came back on leave. I literally was working 5 jobs. So Bob had to ask me out 17 times before we found a time that worked. I was a waitress, again, hard work, needed to raise money to help me in college, all of that.
So you were working 5 part-time jobs to pay your way through college.
I was. Yeah, I didn't get fired from, because some were being a nanny in between, some, and certainly then some waitress, positions, right?
What's one of your, before we get too far into your adult life, what's one of your favorite childhood memories?
I would have to say playing, we would literally, it's a long story, but, I had friends who had either big homes or summer camps on the lake.
Oh, wow.
As a blue-collar family, we could not afford that. So there was a private beach. And so my mom and dad, in order to give the 4 of us kids that lake experience, my mom in the summertime ran kind of that private beach. It was small, but there was a concession stand where we did hamburgers and hot dogs and candy and ice cream, and we sold. And the back end of it, Mom turned into like a little cabin, with a place to sit, a place to sleep, for the kids to grow up. And what I remember is having friends come down and cousins come down and us playing in the water for hours on end.
Cool.
Swimming and, just doing acrobatics and doing all kinds of things.
It sounds like if you had just been a member of that beach, you wouldn't have had access. Like, you were the cool kid that could get into the concession stand.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I was flipping the burgers.
Right. Yeah.
Many times.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah,
exactly.
Cool. So Bob, he got out of the Navy?
He did. And then and then where's he going to go to college? And so we looked at multiple places, and one was the University of Northern Colorado. And another was the University of Miami. We took a trip down to go look at the University of Miami and decided we did not want to live in the middle of, a big city like that. And so we said,
and the heat.
Yes. Yeah. And so kind of sight unseen, not the University of Northern Colorado. Colorado has this amazing mystique,
for sure,
especially if you're back east, And it also was going to offer, him initially what he thought he wanted to do.
What did he want to study?
He actually came for a biology and an ecology minor. So, and then he ended up actually moving over to CSU with a degree in natural resources.
So he didn't finish at UNC?
No, they kind of didn't really have what he wanted. So then he went to CSU.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's okay. I mean, I wish he was a bear, but
yeah,
it's okay. We're going to let it go.
He was a bear for a year.
Yeah. Okay. So he's a bear.
Yeah.
And so that's how you guys ended up in Colorado.
Yeah.
And then how did you start working with United Way, or how did you get into nonprofit?
You bet. So when we first came here, it actually, UNC was on trimesters.
Okay.
And so we came like towards the end of September. We had come out earlier in July for orientation, for all of that, but we didn't move until like mid-September.
Okay. So you guys, I'm guessing you got married somewhere in there?
Yes, right.
So you got married and then started your life together.
Exactly.
Young, with a trunk full of clothes, and let's go. Yeah.
It was a station wagon. And everything we owned fit in that station wagon.
What an adventure. I mean, that's an adventure today with GPS and cell phones. But back then, I mean, that's a long distance.
It was.
A couple thousand miles.
And all family was back. I mean, we didn't know anybody out here. So it really was kind of this adventure.
Going for it.
Yeah.
You're the oldest. I bet your mom was nervous.
And well, of course, it's led to is my sister lives in Estes Park. My brother actually got his master's at UNC. My other brother ended up coming out west, and he lives in Billings, Montana. So it's kind of led to us being all
migration
out in the west.
patterns. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's kind of, it's interesting. Right?
Exactly.
So then you're out here, Bob's going to school. You started doing.
Yeah. I, actually, the reason the trimester thing is all the teaching jobs were gone.
Oh, gotcha.
And that was a time that there was a surplus of teachers also. And so...
that is not the case right now.
No, it's not, but it was then. And so signed up to be a substitute, but that wasn't going to give us, the money that we needed to pay the rent and do all of that. So fell upon an executive director of a childcare center. And so took that job. And 6 months later, the owner said, would you like to buy this place? And so it was like, my husband's in college, we're here on the GI Bill, I don't get that paid that much. But they kind of held the loan and
so
we ended up buying it. They carried the loan. And we had, Uncle Jack had given us stock in Johnson & Johnson. And so that was the down payment. And so, so we did that for, while Bob was in college. And then we were volunteers for the Partners Program. And so...
Were you guys living in Greeley then?
Yes. We've lived in Greeley the whole time since we came to Colorado. Yep. And so we fell in love with that program. And then
explain what there are people that are listening that
don't know what Partners is. Yeah. And actually they call themselves Partners Mentoring Youth.
Okay.
And so Partners, we used to say, is similar to Big Brothers, Big Sisters, except at one time, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, it was a single parents.
Okay.
Was the identifier. And Partners is at risk, more an at-risk child.
Okay.
Right. And so then that executive director position came open. It was
so you were just volunteering.
Volunteering.
Both of you were. You had partners, because that's what they call them, right? This is my partner.
Right.
So now
this is my junior partner, and then I'm the senior partner.
Right. And the executive director job opened up.
And I was at a place of kind of looking and saying, do I want to own this child care center my whole life? Even though it had been wonderful livelihood. We had, we did a lot of great things. So dear friend, Brian Guest, a mutual friend
of both of ours, yes. Part of my church.
At 2.5 years old
oh, wow.
to the preschool daycare center that we ran. In the summers, we ran about 100 children.
That.
Yeah. I have some more questions to ask you about that later.
And so it was just like at the time in my life that made sense. We fell in love with the Partners program. And so did that for many, many years.
Okay.
And then
so did you sell the daycare?
We did.
Okay, so you sold the daycare.
We did.
Now you're executive director at Partners.
Right. And then during the years I was there, we also took in foster boys. We had teenage foster boys. And that was difficult. It was hard. And that was also what really cemented for me that having an impact on the first 2 years of life is really, really important. And realize that in the Partners program, that how important that was, laying that early foundation, and, that solid, foundation that is there for success in the future.
Talk a little bit about that, Jeannine. That's interesting.
Yeah.
What's happening in the brain? Why is that so important socially? And
85% of the human brain is formed by the age of 5.
Wow.
85%. The brain science, tells us that only when a child has positive experiences, those synapses in the brain are very, they're connecting,
they're
doing what they need to do in that growth time. And so
if a child is experiencing trauma,
neglect,
loss,
abuse, it has a definite impact on the brain.
The brain's development.
Exactly.
That'll stay for the rest of their life.
For the rest of their life.
Interesting. One of the things that I'm on the board of United Way, and one of the things that I found so interesting was at some point early on, I heard this: when a community needs to decide prison capacity in the next generation, they look at third grade reading scores in this generation, and that tells them how many prisons they're going to need to build. So to your point, it's so critical that kids get a good start, because if they're not reading at grade level, by third grade, we can talk about that more in a little bit. Man, we're gonna have a larger prison population. Like it's
exactly, and so it's it's part of a formula that the experts would do to figure that out. But the fact that one of the criteria in that formula is third grade reading scores is incredible, because and that's what I saw working with troubled youth is that part of when they hit middle school and they can't keep ahead, they're lost because they never really learned how to read. So of course they're acting out. I mean, it's a difficult time for
they're embarrassed
people, for adolescents anyway. But now, we're totally lost of what's going on in the classroom. And so that's when we have...
And then that gap gets wider and wider the older they get. Now they're into... They're doing algebra, and this guy never learned division, and the gap just
Yep.
Gross, yeah.
I mean, it's brain science. Dr. Bruce Perry has been a leader in looking at that brain science from literally looking at the difference in brains.
Mm-hmm.
And he's done a lot of his work in prisons and then been able to go back. And it's the science, you know? So it literally, a brain looks different from a child that has been sung to, cared for, played with, talked to, you know, that they're hearing words every day. Those synapses are creating the foundation. And when a child doesn't have those things, that brain literally looks, when they take a picture of the brain, it looks different.
Wow.
And then when you have a child that's been abused, you know, or neglected, it even
worse.
Looks worse.
Wow.
Right. So that was, you know, and I began to realize that having an impact on those teenage boys would have been had we gotten them earlier, which ultimately led to Bob and I adopting our son.
All right.
Because
How old was he?
He was he was 3.5 months when he came.
Oh wow.
Right. So
was he out of the foster system? Was he?
He was from Korea.
Oh, okay.
So it was a foreign-born adoption.
All right.
And that's a story unto itself. You know, it was one of those things where friends had adopted, several friends had adopted a Korean child as a baby. And we asked a question when we began to explore adopting. And we went to an event that they invited us to where it was Children's Day on May 5th in Denver. In Korea, it's Children's Day.
Okay.
And they were celebrating, and one was cuter than the next. And we fell in love with the people that worked at the agency, and it just kind of all came together. So much quicker than we ever imagined. But
he was at Children's Day?
No. He came directly from Korea.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
But we started, this is uncanny, we started our group like assessment, because you start with kind of, you know, you apply, but then you have to go through lots of things, you know, an FBI check, you know, all of this, but they did kind of group, you know, kind of talking and meetings, and we had to go for 6 weeks, you know, once a week. And our first day that we started class, uncannily, when we look back, was the day Michael was born.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah.
So that was like, whoa.
It's the game of chess that God is playing behind the scenes is incredible.
Exactly. Right. You know, we found out we couldn't biologically have children, and so
and across the world.
Yeah. And you know, there's a great little story about, you know, that it's a gumball machine and God is sending those souls, you know, down, and at some point there's a fork.
Yeah.
Right. And one way is biologically, and another way children come to us in other ways, which for us was adoption.
It's like a pinball machine.
Yeah,
it's kind of moving its way. And
it's a great little story.
Yeah. That's interesting. So that's Michael.
Yes, Michael.
And how old is he now?
Michael turned 37 on Saturday of this week.
Happy birthday, Michael.
Yeah, July 9th.
So you're how long did you work at Partners?
I was there just about 6 years.
Okay.
Right.
And then how did you now make the move to United Way?
So really what was going on, I believed, you know, certainly in the program, but it was very direct service intensive. And we did see a lot of hurting kids. Bob and I also had foster boys, you know, teenage boys. And I began to question, were we really making an impact? And I just began to question that. And I had volunteered for United Way as an agency director. And that job came open. And I thought, you know, with us adopting a child, you know, with all of that, that's probably going to be easier on, you know, as opposed to running this small agency that, you know, requires so much. And little did I know I was going from the frying pan to the fire.
Into the fire, yeah. But there's also, I think, a philosophical shift that you made, because it's that old human services model of, you know, you keep pulling people out of the river that are drowning, which is what you were doing, trying to rescue these boys and these teenagers. Or you can move upstream and see
exactly,
find out systemically why are they in the water? And so that's
and that's what I needed. I needed to be a step away, still having purpose, still making a difference in the lives of others, but we needed to concentrate on our new baby, and I needed to not be embroiled in that direct service work.
It's if someone's never done it, it is very emotionally taxing. It's hard. It's hard work. I mean, pastoring is similar to that. You're on the front lines and it's messy
and you are taking on all the emotional needs of those kids and their pain,
right?
And all of that, and
the weight of what's going to happen to them. Are they going to be successful? Are they
exactly?
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot.
So it was kind of, I think, God sent, right?
Right. I agree.
I think it was God sent.
That game of chess. So how big was United Way when you took over?
We were raising less than $500,000.
Okay.
And there were really only 3 staff members, and 2 of them were part-time.
Okay.
So there were initially 3 of us. One of the first big steps was I hired a 4th person shortly after coming on. And
I'll bet looking back, that was a big, scary moment. Can we do this? Can we afford it?
Exactly.
This is big. And
exactly. 36 years later, a totally different organization in both its business model, in its size, and all the different things that we're doing. But it still was about a basic concept of bringing people together, because when we work together, we can achieve more. And
that's kind of the community collaboration idea with that United Way is brings everybody to the table and let's all kind of attack a problem instead of each of us trying to
do that separately,
do our own thing, and it's not as effective as if we strategize, right?
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about, so I was going to ask you how old you were when you got the CEO job, but then you just said 36 years you've been doing it, so people will be able to do the math, so I want to ask you that.
Right.
Because I know people will.
Yeah.
I know how they are. Let's talk about leading. Oh, before we do that, what's your favorite job you've ever had, and what's the least favorite job?
Favorite is United Way.
Okay.
Favorite is United Way, and least when Bob and I were saving money for him to go to UNC that summer. Or no, that is even before. Actually, we were married, and then he had to finish a stint at Lakehurst, New Jersey. And so we were there just for a couple months. And so he was every day having to go to work, and I've got to work too, again. And I took a job in a cabinet making factory.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I thought I was going for a secretary job, desk job. Found out, no, I was going to have my own little screwdriver and my own little drill. I was going to actually put
building
the cabinets together. And I will tell you, it wasn't the hard work. It was how people were treated.
Oh.
And I'll tell you, when I went, that's it. I'm out of here. I lasted 11 days.
People don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. I mean, that is true. Yeah.
And they did hire some folks that were mentally challenged for certain jobs, and how they were treated. I
couldn't handle it.
I couldn't handle it. And so, so 11 days, that was it.
You walked out.
I walked out. I said, Bob, come get me. This is my last day.
Yeah.
Yep.
I worked 2 weeks at a hog farm. And that was, couldn't do it.
Yep.
My job was to put the deceased hogs into a refrigerated trailer and stack them up. Some of them were like 400 pounds. I mean,
wow.
And my last day, the refrigeration unit broke. It was summer.
My
gosh. It was, I won't finish it, but it was,
it wasn't about lifting the doors. It wasn't, it was really about, I can't handle this environment. Yeah.
But so now when you're as a leader who's led multiple staff, you recognize how important that is to create an environment where people feel valued, where they feel like they're listened to, because you can have your dream job,
right?
But if you don't like the people you're working with, or you don't feel valued, it's awful. But you can shovel horse manure with your best friend,
exactly,
and it's okay because the people you work with, and you can make it fun.
It's so true.
So important, that culture, and
it really is.
So talk a little bit about that, Jeannine, about creating a culture. I mean, you had to, when you have 3 employees, there is a culture, for
right?
Sure,
right.
But it's still pretty soft and malleable, and
right.
But now, how many employees are there now?
We have almost 40. Yeah,
Okay,
with our vistas. Right.
That's a different.
It is.
Organization. Talk about creating culture in that.
So for me, and what I'm, most proud of, would be that I like to empower people.
Okay.
And so yes, I have to make difficult decisions, and and have to do that. But when indeed people can own the work, when they have input and they have ideas, and those are encouraged, certainly within a framework, right?
There is some things we have to get done.
Exactly. Right. And there's some things we can and can't do, either because legally we can't, either because that's not a priority for the organization. It takes us, kind of down a rabbit hole.
Right.
And so within that framework, to me, you want to, as a leader, create an environment where people can flourish within that framework. And that takes trusting, right? And so, you're responsible to give them the tools and the resources that they need to be able to flourish. But I guess I do best, when people challenge me, when, they come with ideas, when they want to improve things. And I think when, we create then that sort of, I'm thinking of like almost a platform, and when we create that platform, they'll flourish. People will amaze you.
If you give them room.
If you do.
Yeah.
If you give them the opportunity to be able to bring their ideas, and in ways that they might do it a little different than you do, and where they have an opportunity to do that, they indeed. And when they feel appreciated, when they know that indeed they made some things happen.
So talk to the micromanaging boss.
Because I could be.
So as you're talking, here's the picture that comes to my mind. A bowling alley with bumpers, right?
Yes.
If I want it done a very, very specific way, then the bumpers are very close together. There's no autonomy. It's just, It's almost like a robot could do that.
Right.
But the wider you make them, the bigger margin for error there is, but there's also more room for creativity, for innovation, for all that. So talk to the micromanager who is maybe, what would you tell them? Like,
well, number one, do you have a person that has been trained?
Okay.
Do they have both, the skills, the resources? Do they have all of that to be able to to make those good decisions? Because, and also then, do they have the self-esteem?
Interesting. Yeah.
Right?
Good point.
And so then how do we build their self-esteem so that, because sometimes what I find is that folks are afraid to do that because they don't, and they're afraid of doing something wrong.
Afraid of making a mistake.
And so
getting in trouble or being embarrassed.
Because we've all had folks that, because of past experiences, they're afraid to make a decision. And so how do we build them up at the same time giving them what they need and the information they need to make good decisions?
Yes, that's good.
Right. So I think that
you can't just turn them loose. You got to have good training and resources. Yeah.
And then the difficult thing in my mind is when indeed because I've been accused of being a micromanager, right? Now, I didn't think of it that way.
Right.
I thought of it, no, I gave you this big, huge framework. You've now gone outside of that framework, right? And so
that's part of leading is identifying, here's what we are doing, and this is what we're not doing.
And what are the trends saying? What are the best practices saying? What are, so yes, you've got this idea, but what's that based on, right? So the other thing that, I think I bring is one, emotional intelligence. I think I score high in emotional intelligence. And so it's knowing that. And in many cases, I think I can put myself in either the donor's shoes or the agency shoes, or, I think I have the ability to be able to put myself. And then sometimes it's helping others be able to do that too.
So there are a lot of, in your role, there are a lot of people at the table to consider. There are the donors you mentioned.
Right.
I mean, these are folks who are, it's a sacred trust when someone gives you money and they're expecting you to do something.
Absolutely.
That you say you're going to do with it, or that, we're going to end homelessness. That's one of our big initiatives. We're going to try and end at least veteran homelessness right now. We're targeting sacred trust in someone. So you got the donors, you've got partner agencies that are also going shoulder to shoulder to try and solve these problems and working together. That's a sacred trust.
Yep.
You have your employees who are also,
making their ideas,
even financial sacrifices to work in this field.
Yep.
Nonprofit doesn't always pay, what
exactly
the corporate world would pay. Is there anybody else? Am I missing anybody?
No, because, and
clients.
then it would be, certainly community leaders, but they really fit into that donor, also.
So then there's the customers, the clients,
and the clients too.
People who are coming for help.
Yep.
There's a lot of pieces there and they don't always recognize each other.
Right.
Don't think about each other.
Right.
You've got to think about.
We think about all of them.
Everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
So what is something that people get wrong, or a myth about, that you think they don't get about leading, or about your field or your expertise? What is it that people don't get?
What I would say about United Way that they don't get, there's a lot of misunderstandings. They think we're a middleman. That's number one. They really think we're just a middleman, and they don't understand the level of work. And it's not until you are a board member, it's not until, you've been a volunteer, that you begin to see that, the least thing they are is a middleman, right? They are leveraging these resources, these donations. They are putting them where they need to go. They are challenging the systems to do better, so that, they won't need a night of lodging in a couple years from now.
Yes.
So they won't need a food box from a couple years from now, that we are thinking ahead, about how that we're not just serving and helping people, but we're moving people along.
The idea is that we want to, speaking now as we, because we work together on this, we want to work ourselves out of business. That would be the ideal.
Absolutely.
We don't want to run a cold weather shelter in perpetuity.
Absolutely.
We would love to solve the problem. And that's
absolutely
a challenge. It's a ongoing keep you up at night kind of.
It is.
So talk a little bit, Jeannine, about mentors you've had. One of the questions I like to ask is, if you were building a Mount Rushmore kind of monument, and you were going to put your mentors, people who have been influential, because nobody is self-made. I don't buy that.
Absolutely.
We all stand on the shoulders of people that have gone before us, right?
Absolutely.
Who would be on yours, or who do you think of as that mentor that really saw it in you, or challenged you, or?
Certainly, it starts back with family, right? And so certainly, whether it's my mom and dad kind of together, or, whatever, but my mom stands out. Certainly as being somebody that would be there. And then when one of the most wonderful things about working for a nonprofit is the board of directors. And that literally in every year, from the time I even started at Partners, I got to work with some amazing business leaders, faith leaders, people from all walks of life that come on a volunteer board.
Mm-hmm.
And really they're my bosses, right? But they're my mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's so hard to choose just a few, because each one has taught me something different. Each one has challenged me differently. And I've learned from each and every one of those board chairs. That's a unique relationship.
I'm going to ask you to.
But I could name a couple.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
So Dick Montfort stands out.
Right. Owner of the Rockies.
Done a
lot in our community. Rockies aren't doing great right now, but we'll talk about
it's
that
okay. And Dick stands out for me because even just watching him from afar, he hard worker, one of the hardest workers, always wanting to do his best, and I think.
Deeply cares about Weld County.
He really does.
Yeah.
And he deeply cares about making a difference.
Those of you that are not from Colorado, the Montfort family, Ken Montfort, Dick's father, started a beef packing house and cattle feeding operation in northern Colorado that has gone on to employ thousands of people and brought significant revenue into the city. And so Dick and his brother bought the Colorado Rockies. Did they started the team or they bought it? Anyway, they own the Rockies, but they also do a significant amount of work in Northern Colorado through United Way and other groups. Yeah.
Amazingly generous, highly intelligent. Used to crack me up when we'd show a financial something. They could go, so there's something wrong with that. There's a funny number there. I mean, he's highly intelligent. He can just pick stuff out.
Right, yeah.
It's like, let me take a look.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
Interesting, yeah.
We need to delve into that. And he would come back, when he was the campaign chair, he would come back with 10, 12 pages of notes of ideas, So anything he does with a total commitment, And so certainly I felt most challenged and by, working directly with him, but I learned so much. Harold Evans is have its Evans Management Group. At one time, he was at Hensel Phelps, engineer, and I remember to this day some of the lessons that he came on as board chair during a time when we had multiple challenges in the United Way system as a whole, and then we had a challenge here locally with an organization that we kind of shifted some funding to another organization, and they were angry and all kinds of stuff was in the newspaper. And, and Harold just taught me some great lessons. The one I remember is he said, Jeannine, in engineering, when we have a barrier, sure, we study the barrier, but we spend more time figuring out how to go over, under, or around it. And not so much just focusing on that barrier. Every time I have a tough problem to solve, I remember that.
Yeah, that's a good lesson.
And I go, I'm concentrating too much on the barrier. I have to concentrate more on how to get around it. So, those things.
That's good because the barrier can paralyze you.
Yes.
If it's,
yes.
If it's significant, if it's scary, if it's overwhelming.
Yep.
That's really good.
Jay Heinrichs was our board chair. Jay did so many behind the scenes things that nobody would ever know about. I mean, right down to, one time his son was watching he was actually mowing our lawn and we were on vacation and major hailstorm came. Jay cleaned up the whole backyard. And that's a physical thing, but that is Jay would do things. And then it was like,
that tells you about the man though.
It does. And he would do things
Tell
in the
everybody
office.
who Jay is because
Jay Heinrichs was the former UNC athletic director. And then he went to Ames Community College and helped build their athletic building. And it was there. And now he's back in his hometown kind of community where his family and his wife's family is near. And so he was actually a manager of Kansas City Royals at one time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
he was my son's t-ball coach.
Oh.
When he was the the director of athletics at UNC. He coached my son's T-ball team.
So Jay was just that human being that, he didn't tell us that he cleaned up that yard and how bad it was. He said, "Oh, it's not that bad." As we're calling in to check on things. It's not that bad. It was the neighbors that told us.
Oh, interesting.
What Jay did. Yeah. So
it's that behind the scenes stuff that
yeah.
It's character.
Yeah.
It's really what it is. He's a man of character. And so
exactly
what you don't see contributes to what we do see in success and whatever that word means, right?
Huge mentors to me. Just seeing that inspires you and makes you want to be a better person.
Right, for sure it does. The boards that you've assembled over the years, volunteer boards, it's a significant commitment of time and mental energy and all that. But I mean, you have put together, just in the time I've been there, it's a who's who of leadership in Northern Colorado. Why do you think, what's your strategy behind that? And why do you think you've been so successful gathering that kind of leadership firepower, I would say?
So another mentor for me was Frank Lakin, and the other one was Joe Tennyson. Mm-hmm. And for those that aren't from Greeley, you wouldn't know who they are, but just unbelievably dedicated people to the community. And one of the other things they taught me is don't assume people are going to say no.
Oh.
Just ask. Go for the top.
Mm-hmm.
And ask. Go out and talk to them and ask. And so, we've done that. We've said who is needed. And yes, you get no's, because people's lives, are such that they it's not a good timing. Mm-hmm. But we owe it to the people we serve to ask for the best. And then the other thing we've worked on is, we might have some who's, but we also need to constantly be looking at who represents the community, and who can also come to the table, and understand kind of the common good. Because we do, I think all of our current board members and past, they come from different backgrounds, they come from different political, views, right. They come from
industries.
Exactly. Industries, all of that. But, let's bring that group together, and we all do want something that's the same. We want to see people in our community, rise up and, reach their greatest potential. We want children to reach their greatest potential. We want youth to be able to reach. We want families to be able to, to get to a place where they can provide for their basic needs of their children, where education, all of that, where we advance. And so that's, people come from all these different, but that we can believe in together.
That's good, yeah.
And so
I can imagine, I mean, you never know, but when you share what United Way is about and the focus areas, I can't imagine anyone would say, that's not important.
Right.
You know what I mean? And of course, you got your outliers that are just against everything. But,
right.
But generally speaking, most people will say, yeah, I think it's important that our kids are reading at grade level by third grade. Or I think it's important that everyone has a place to sleep at night. That's important.
All people.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
So what is your 36 years of leading, more than that really, 36 years of just leading United Way? What's your favorite thing about leading? And what's your least favorite thing about leading?
Probably the same answer, people and people. Most favorite is, and I feel, sometimes I say to the staff, I feel like a mother hen. Mm-hmm. But when I see people succeed that I work with. So two things I would say, one from a staff level, when people are with us, they make a difference, and then they even go on to do other things that fulfill their dreams, right? And we've been a step.
Part of that somehow.
And a part of that. And, I have a list of folks that now we're heading United Ways and that are, working in an international program in DC and working for the state of Colorado. And so that's watching that. The other would be the volunteers. Is that when we bring somebody onto the board and they think they understand all what we're doing and they learn we're doing so much more, and then they can go out and speak in the community. Mm-hmm. They own it. Mm-hmm. I get such just all kinds of, I just feel so excited. Mm-hmm. I could start dancing on the table.
Right.
Because they then own it and they're able to be advocates in the community for what we do. So that's the most exciting thing to me.
Good, yeah.
And then the least is, you can't be a leader without have gotten burned.
For sure, yeah.
Gotten betrayed, all those things. And that's hard because, people make a big difference for me, and
sure.
I do take it all to heart. And so
that's part of caring.
It's hard. It is.
It's part of caring about what you do. So talk a little bit about this. This will be helpful for any leader, any young leader, aspiring leader, business leader, anybody in any kind of leadership aspirations. When you say Joe Tennyson taught you to ask, right? Just go ask.
Right.
In your mind, what makes up an ask, or how do you frame an ask? Because United Way does, right. asks people in the community to give. You ask people to be on your board. You ask people to join your staff.
I had an aunt that once said, "Oh, you're a professional basket passer." That image of the usher, passing the basket in church, and that was definitely an insult in my mind. Boy, she didn't understand what I do.
Right.
I had a training I went to, and it was like a light bulb moment. Mm-hmm. And this person was like a top fundraiser, had raised money for Stanford, all kinds of things. And he was now at a consulting business and he was doing this training. And he actually came into the room with a cape on. And he twirled around and the cape on the back said, "The Great Inviter." Mm-hmm. And it's to not think of yourself as asking, but inviting people to be a part of something very, very exciting. Because sometimes it is hard,
right.
To make that call, but if you do that flip of the switch and say, if I really believe in this, I'm inviting people to be a part of something. And I really believe in this work. And so I think of it as we're inviting you to be a part of something that's very exciting. And you bring skills and talents. If it's a volunteer board member, or you have skills and talents you can bring to us. You can bring us a perspective that we really need, all of that. And
even when you frame it that way, we're inviting you to be a part financially.
Right.
We're going to put our money together in a way that we're going to leverage it.
Yes.
And you're going to get such a much greater return if you come in, and we're inviting you to be a part of this financially because you're going to have a greater return, as opposed to if you just try and,
right,
do this work yourself or whatever.
Exactly.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah. And that, I am amazed by the United Way donor because you're right. There is a sense of, well, I want to make sure I help that family. I want to give it to them directly.
Right.
That gratification that people tend to get. And so for me, when that donor knows the work, has the trust, and they don't necessarily have to meet and see that person.
Right.
That's a higher kind of level of thinking in my mind. Because it says, I trust this, I've seen what they've done. And I don't have to be the one that is getting a thank you.
Right.
And all of that. One of the toughest things is helping people, because a lot of times they'll say, well, could we meet somebody, a child that has been helped? Could we have the family come and I just, for me, it's like nails on the chalkboard.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because what makes us think that these aren't even our own family members, that they aren't our own neighbors, that they're not the person we sit next to at work?
To parade them
and
dignity.
Yeah, so when they ask that, it's not that they're coming from a bad place.
Right.
It's just that we need to help them understand. That
and United Way does do a good job of telling the story broadly,
right,
with video and at events. So there is plenty of storytelling in that sense.
Right.
But to dog and pony show it would be really tasteless, I think. Yeah.
It is. Even in my partner's days, that used to be difficult when
Right.
people would say, well, could we have a kid come and talk? And be like, ooh,
maybe an adult
yeah,
that was in the program, but yeah, a kid is.
yeah, it's, to me, and again, people don't ask that from a negative place. They just don't understand.
Right.
So
are you introverts and extroverts recharge differently?
Right.
And so what would you spend a lot of time doing this kind of stuff in front of the camera, on the stage, in more higher profile environments with high caliber leaders and leading staff. Are you more of an introvert or an extrovert? And how do you recharge then?
So I think I'm a bit of both.
Okay.
And I do, because yes, I love being with people. I love all of that, but I can be awkward in a group where it's not my realm of knowing people.
Right.
The shyness in me can come out. Put me in a room with total strangers, and that shyness will come out. I'll be a little more, and I almost have to push myself,
That's interesting. I can't imagine you in that.
I know you can't.
Yeah.
Because, if it's a United Way event, I'm talking to people, welcoming people,
Right, yeah.
doing all that. But throw me in a group of total strangers, and I might be a little shyer, So that makes me know that definitely there's an introvert.
Right.
And so recharging is important also. Sometimes I push myself to the point that, I have a good friend that says, Jeannine, I know because you're sick, you've got that respiratory thing, and you have been pushing
the rest. Yeah.
that. And so I'll have to totally crash, but quiet times. I am really enjoying my home more than ever. I am enjoying, the quiet times with my husband. Just doing the simplest of things. People say, oh, what big plans do you have, for retirement? And it's the little things. One of the things, Bob, and I call it exploring. And here's when we had no money and, trying to save money to come out to Colorado, and we didn't have any money. Of course, gas was only probably 25 cents a gallon at that time.
It's all relative, though.
But we would literally just get in the car. We had no destination, and we just start exploring. Or we'd be going down a familiar road, and you never had stopped at one place. And so you have the right to say, I want to go there.
Oh, interesting. Good.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's how we would spend a Sunday afternoon. And I still, to this day, nothing is better than saying, let's go do an exploring day. We know we're going to head this way. We don't know where we're going to go.
Let's go to Cheyenne or
exactly.
wherever.
And that we've never stopped there, and I've always wanted to stop there. And so that's what I picture us doing in our retirement, or simple things.
Fills your tank.
Yeah.
That's good.
We were in New Mexico one time, and we love going to northern New Mexico, and we've always passed this little place on the way from Taos to Espanola. And as you're going along the Rio Grande, and it's this crazy little gas pump museum, and it looks kind of trashy, and, and we did an exploring day. We said, we don't know where we're going to end up. We're just going to go. And we stopped there. We spent 2.5 hours because the place grew and grew and grew.
Okay.
And he has all this stuff, and we chatted with him, and what was his story?
Exactly.
Why did he start?
What would possess a man to create? Yeah, I would love to hear that. Yeah.
Those days are just treasured.
Right.
They are treasured.
And we miss that if we're always in a hurry.
Yes.
To our detriment, we miss some great. It's what happens along the way.
Exactly.
Not the destination. It's what happens along the way.
Yeah.
That we remember. And
exactly. It's like, oh, we need to get to Santa Fe. And so we just rush down that road and never, stop.
Interesting. That's good. Yeah, that's really a good life lesson.
Yep. A great road to take is the one from, we leave at Dixon and we go and kind of take that high road and then end up in Chimayo.
Oh, right.
And that's always the destination, but we've taken like a whole day to stop.
There's such a great little chapel there in Chimayo.
Yes. Yes.
The dirt where people go. And if you've never been to Chimayo, it's well worth the drive.
It is.
And the food is incredible.
It is.
Okay, so 2 more questions. One, I like to ask this of everybody because it's such a loaded word and it's so everyone's on their own journey. Are you successful? And what does that word successful mean to you?
I would say yes. And I would say it's because I've had the privilege of having a profession that had purpose. And so I feel like I've been successful because it's been my life's work.
Mm-hmm.
And not everybody gets to do that.
Right.
And yes, there's a lot of stress that comes with that. There's a lot of hours that come with that, but I am totally privileged. One, to have had a position that impacts people in a positive way. Mm-hmm. And 2, to have been able to meet the people and work alongside them that I have. Phenomenal to me.
Yes. Good.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. Last question. Where have you seen God in all of this?
Certainly it's in the generosity of people, and the caring in people. In my life, it would be, I've seen it in illness. Of loved ones. And
really hard to watch,
yeah. But the miracle. I mean, when I was 14, my dad was given 6 months to live.
Oh, wow.
And they tried something, but I believe it was the power of prayer.
Oh, wow. Yes.
And he didn't die until our son, so Michael was 5, so he died in 1990.
Okay. How old was he?
He was 66.
Wow. Still pretty young,
yeah. Yep. And
but got a lot more years.
Yeah.
Than
many. I mean, I was 14,
And what was the illness or what was the?
He had cancer. Right. And really, and went to the VA and, stayed at that hospital at that time, and they had only given him 6 months to live. And, every night my mom would, after work would go 15, 20 miles away, to go visit him at the hospital. And as the oldest, and I believe the 4 of us little siblings praying, saying the rosary, which I enforced.
You better do all the beads.
Yeah. Get on your knees. No. I believe that. There were a lot of people in the community that were praying for Dad. There were, and yes, science did the work, but it was a last kind of, as a last chance, we're going to try this. And so, but, and then he had many returns of cancer and just, and even, I had a cancer, caught it early. And I just know that, and then when my mom passed, my mom was given 6 weeks to live. And we brought her out here because of being through my dad's cancer, we knew as siblings that all of us could give up all our vacation, and the doctors don't really know.
Right. Yes.
So we brought her out here. because my sister lived in Colorado and I lived, and we had we have a small house, but it was set up such that there's a bathroom right to where, on the main floor and all of that. And Mom was with us about 2.5 years.
Wow.
So, I just, yeah. So it's in all of that,
right.
that I know. When Mom passed, something happened that, it was my confirmation that there is life after death.
Interesting. Yeah.
And, that there is God.
Yes. Good. Well, with that, we will wrap it up. Thank you so much. Thanks for giving us this view into sometimes it's, you see someone up front, but you don't get to hear some of the things that made them who they are and some of their thought process. That's been really helpful for me. I know people listening to this are going to enjoy it. So thank you.
Thank you
for being on the show.
Angel. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.